The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, carried by a traveling merchant who'd ridden hard from Silver Creek with news that no father should ever have to hear. My hands shook as I broke the wax seal, recognizing my daughter Catherine's careful handwriting on the envelope. She'd been living with my sister's family in Silver Creek for the past year, helping with their general store while attending the new school that had opened there. What I read in that letter made my blood run cold. "Papa," Catherine had written, "I'm writing this in secret because I don't know who else to turn to. Reverend Blackwood has convinced the town that I'm possessed by demons. He says the strange things that have been happening around me are proof of evil spirits, and he's planning an exorcism ceremony this Sunday. Papa, I'm scared. Please come quickly. I don't understand what's happening to me, but I know it's not what he says it is." I read the letter 3 times before the full horror of the situation sank in. My Catherine, my brilliant, curious 16-year-old daughter, was being accused of demonic possession by a preacher who'd apparently convinced an entire town that superstition was more reliable than common sense. My name is Robert Mackenzie, and I'm a doctor, trained at the University of Pennsylvania before coming west to establish my practice in the Arizona Territory. I'd seen enough real medical conditions to know that what ignorant people often attributed to supernatural causes usually had perfectly natural explanations. But being right about the science wouldn't matter if the good people of Silver Creek decided to cure my daughter with methods that belonged in the dark ages. I saddled my fastest horse and rode the 60 miles to Silver Creek in record time, stopping only to rest the animal when absolutely necessary. As I crested the final hill overlooking the town, I could see crowds gathering around the church, their voices carrying on the wind with the ugly edge of mob excitement. Silver Creek was a prosperous mining town, swollen with fortune seekers and the businesses that catered to them. It should have been a place of opportunity and progress, but like many frontier communities, it was also a place where fear and superstition could take root and flourish among people far from the civilizing influences of established society. I rode straight to my sister Margaret's house, where I found her waiting on the porch with tears streaming down her face. Margaret was 5 years younger than me, a practical woman who'd never believed in anything she couldn't see and touch, which made her obvious distress all the more alarming. "Robert, thank God you're here," she said, embracing me fiercely. "It's gotten so much worse since Catherine wrote that letter. Reverend Blackwood has the whole town convinced she's dangerous. They're talking about things I can't even repeat. Where is she now? Locked in the church basement. Blackwood says it's for everyone's safety, including hers. He won't let anyone see her except his spiritual advisors." Margaret's voice carried bitter emphasis on the last words. I felt rage building in my chest like a thunderstorm. "Margaret, tell me exactly what's been happening. What convinced these people that Catherine is possessed?" My sister led me inside, where her husband James was pacing the floor like a caged animal. James Mitchell was a good man, steady and reliable, but I could see the strain of the past few days had pushed him near the breaking point. "It started about 2 weeks ago," Margaret began, settling into her chair with the exhausted movements of someone who'd barely slept. Catherine was helping Mrs. Henderson in her bakery when all the bread dough in the shop suddenly rose at once. Even the batches that had just been mixed. Mrs. Henderson said it was like watching magic happen. "Then there was the incident at the schoolhouse," James added. "Catherine was reading aloud from a science book when every piece of metal in the room began to vibrate. Nails, the bell, even the teacher's spectacles. The children were terrified." Margaret nodded, her face pale with remembered fear. "And yesterday, when she was walking past the dry goods store, every compass in the place started spinning like they'd gone mad, all pointing in different directions, none of them finding true north." I listened to their account with growing understanding. What they were describing weren't supernatural phenomena, but symptoms of a very real and very dangerous medical condition. I'd read about similar cases in medical journals from back east, though I'd never encountered one personally. Has Catherine been experiencing any physical symptoms?" I asked. "Headaches, dizziness, unusual sensations." "She complained of headaches for weeks," Margaret replied. "And she said sometimes she feels like there's electricity running through her body. But Reverend Blackwood says that's the demons trying to escape." I stood up abruptly, my medical training overriding my fear for Catherine's immediate safety. "Margaret, I need to see her right now. What you're describing isn't possession, it's a medical emergency." "Robert, you can't," James said grimly. "Blackwood has armed men guarding the church. He says no one can see Catherine until after the exorcism, for fear the demons might spread to others." The full scope of the disaster became clear to me then. My daughter was suffering from what I believed to be a severe neurological condition that was causing electromagnetic disturbances around her body. Instead of receiving proper medical treatment, she was being treated as a supernatural threat by people who confused unexplained phenomena with evidence of evil. "James, I need you to gather every rational person in this town and bring them to the church. Margaret, do you have any of Catherine's recent letters? Anything that might show her state of mind?" Margaret disappeared into the back room and returned with a bundle of letters tied with ribbon. "She's been writing almost daily, trying to understand what's happening to her. She's scared, Robert, but she's not. She's not the wild, possessed creature Blackwood is describing to people. I read through Catherine's letters quickly, and what I found there broke my heart. My daughter, brilliant and analytical, had been trying to document and understand her condition with the same scientific curiosity I'd taught her since childhood. Her handwriting was steady, her thoughts clear and rational. These were not the ravings of someone possessed by demons, but the careful observations of a young woman trying to make sense of something terrifying happening to her own body. "Listen to this," I said, reading from one of her letters. "The strange sensations seem to be getting stronger, especially during thunderstorms. I've noticed that the effects are most pronounced when I'm emotional or stressed. Yesterday, when I was angry about something Mrs. Carson said, every metal object within 10 feet of me began to vibrate. I think there might be some kind of electrical phenomenon involved, but I don't understand the mechanism." Margaret stared at me. "You mean she's been trying to figure this out scientifically?" "She's been doing exactly what any good student of medicine would do, observing symptoms and looking for patterns. Margaret, our Catherine isn't possessed. She's sick, and she needs medical help, not religious intervention." A commotion outside interrupted our conversation. Through the window we could see a crowd gathering in the street, many carrying torches despite the afternoon sun. At their head walked Reverend Thaddeus Blackwood, a tall, imposing man whose black coat and stern expression gave him the appearance of an Old Testament prophet. Blackwood was relatively new to Silver Creek, having arrived 6 months earlier with impressive credentials and letters of recommendation from churches back east. He'd quickly established himself as a powerful voice in the community, preaching a particularly intense brand of Christianity that emphasized the constant battle between good and evil, and the ever-present threat of supernatural forces. "Brothers and sisters," Blackwood's voice carried clearly through the window, "the time has come to cleanse our community of the evil that has taken root among us. The girl, Catherine Mackenzie, has been possessed by demons of unusual power, and only through prayer, fasting, and the ancient rites of exorcism can we hope to save her soul and protect our town." The crowd murmured agreement, their faces showing the mixture of fear and excitement that comes when ordinary people convince themselves they're part of some great spiritual battle. "But I want you all to understand," Blackwood continued, "that what we attempt tonight is dangerous. The demons inhabiting this child are not ordinary spirits. They have power over the very forces of nature, as you've all witnessed. Some of you may not survive the spiritual warfare we're about to undertake." I felt sick listening to his words. Blackwood was building up the drama, making Catherine's condition seem more supernatural and threatening than it actually was. Whether he truly believed what he was saying, or was simply caught up in his own theatrics, the result would be the same: My daughter would be subjected to treatments that could kill her. "James," I said quietly, "do you have any weapons in the house?" My brother-in-law nodded grimly. "Robert, you can't fight the whole town." "I'm not planning to fight them," I replied, checking the loads in my pistol. "I'm planning to save my daughter. And I'm hoping that when people see the truth, they'll have the courage to admit they were wrong." As the sun began to set over Silver Creek, painting the sky in shades of red and gold that seemed ominous under the circumstances, I prepared to do something that went against every instinct I had as a civilized man. I was going to break into a church, confront a preacher, and rescue my daughter from people who thought they were saving her soul. But first, I had to prove that sometimes the most dangerous demons are the ones that live not in supernatural realms, but in the minds of frightened people who prefer easy answers to difficult truths. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that will touch your heart and inspire your soul. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Night had fallen over Silver Creek by the time I made my way to the church, moving through shadows and back alleys to avoid the crowds that were still gathering in the main square. The building loomed before me like a fortress, its windows glowing with the light of dozens of candles that Reverend Blackwood had arranged for his exorcism ceremony. I could hear voices from inside, rising and falling in what sounded like prayer or chanting, punctuated by Blackwood's booming proclamations about spiritual warfare and the power of faith over darkness. What I couldn't hear was my daughter's voice, and that terrified me more than anything else. The church had two entrances, the main doors at the front, which were certainly guarded, and a smaller side door that led to the basement where Catherine was being held. I'd attended services here during previous visits to Margaret, so I knew the layout well enough to navigate in darkness. The side door was locked, but years of frontier living had taught me skills that my medical education hadn't included. Within minutes I was inside the building, moving carefully through the basement corridors toward the sound of muffled sobbing. I found Catherine in a small storage room that had been converted into a makeshift cell. She was sitting on a rough wooden crate, her hands bound with rope, her face pale and streaked with tears. But what struck me most was her eyes, still clear and intelligent, despite her obvious fear and exhaustion. "Papa?" she whispered as I slipped into the room. "Is it really you, or am I dreaming again?" I cut her bonds quickly and gathered her into my arms, feeling how thin she'd become in just the few weeks since this ordeal began. "I'm here, Catherine. I got your letter and I came as fast as I could. Papa, I'm so scared. I don't understand what's happening to me, but it's getting worse. Every time I get emotional, things start happening around me. Metal objects move, compasses spin, and yesterday I think I made every clock in the church stop at the same time." I held her face in my hands, looking into her eyes with all the medical knowledge I possessed. Her pupils were slightly dilated, and I could feel a faint tremor in her hands that suggested neurological involvement. But more than that, I could see the intelligence and rationality that Blackwood claimed had been destroyed by demonic possession. "Catherine, listen to me carefully. You're not possessed by demons. You're suffering from a medical condition that's affecting your nervous system and creating electrical fields around your body. I've read about cases like this in medical journals, but the things that happen around me are real, but they have a scientific explanation. Your condition is causing your body to generate electromagnetic fields that interfere with metal objects and delicate instruments. It's rare and it's serious, but it's not supernatural." Hope flickered in her eyes for the first time in days. "You mean I'm not evil? I'm not dangerous to people?" "You're sick, sweetheart, not evil. And we're going to get you the proper medical treatment you need. But first, we have to get you out of here before Blackwood does something that could seriously harm you." The sound of footsteps on the stairs above us interrupted our reunion. Heavy boots, multiple people moving with purpose toward the basement. We were running out of time. "Papa, there's something else," Catherine said urgently. "I heard Reverend Blackwood talking to his assistants yesterday. He said if the exorcism doesn't work, if the demons are too strong, they might have to use more permanent measures to protect the community. I think he means to kill me if he can't cure me. Cold rage flooded through my veins. Whatever Blackwood's motivations, whether genuine religious fervor or something darker, he was prepared to murder my daughter rather than admit he might be wrong about the nature of her condition. Catherine, can you walk? Are you strong enough to move quickly? She nodded, though I could see the effort it cost her. The stress and poor conditions of her imprisonment had clearly taken a toll on her health, which would only make her neurological symptoms worse. We made our way carefully through the basement, heading for a back exit that would put us outside the immediate area where Blackwood's followers were gathered. But as we reached the stairs, we heard voices coming from that direction as well. The preacher had been thorough in surrounding the building. This way, I whispered, leading Catherine toward a different route I remembered from previous visits. There was a small window near the church's foundation that opened onto an alley behind the building. It would be a tight squeeze, but it was our best chance of escape. As we moved through the darkness, I could hear the exorcism ceremony beginning upstairs. Blackwood's voice rose in what sounded like Latin prayers, accompanied by the responses of dozens of participants. The sound was both impressive and terrifying, the kind of religious theater that could convince rational people they were witnessing something supernatural. We had just reached the window when disaster struck. Catherine, weakened by stress and poor nutrition, stumbled against a metal shelf. The contact triggered another electromagnetic episode, and every piece of metal hardware in the basement began to vibrate and hum with audible resonance. The sound was impossible to ignore, and within seconds we heard shouts from upstairs as Blackwood and his followers realized something was happening in the basement. The demons. Blackwood's voice boomed through the building. They're trying to escape! Brothers, to the basement. We must contain the evil before it spreads. Footsteps thundered down the stairs from multiple directions. There was no longer any hope of stealth or escape through normal means. I made a decision that went against every peaceful instinct I possessed. I drew my pistol and fired a shot into the ceiling, the sound echoing through the church like thunder. The footsteps stopped abruptly as everyone processed what they'd heard. Reverend Blackwood. I called out, my voice carrying the authority I'd learned from years of dealing with medical emergencies. This is Dr. Robert Mackenzie, Catherine's father. I'm armed and I'm taking my daughter out of here. Anyone who tries to stop me will be shot. Dr. Mackenzie, Blackwood's voice came from the stairs, calm and controlled despite the circumstances. Your daughter is possessed by demons of extraordinary power. If you remove her from consecrated ground before the exorcism is complete, you'll be condemning not only her soul, but potentially the souls of everyone in Silver Creek. My daughter is suffering from a neurological condition that requires medical treatment, not religious intervention. I'm a doctor, Blackwood, and I know the difference between illness and possession. Science cannot explain what this girl has done, Blackwood replied, his voice taking on the fervent edge of someone who'd convinced himself he was fighting a holy war. She has power over the very forces of nature. Only demonic possession could account for such abilities. I heard more people gathering in the basement, moving carefully but steadily in our direction. They were trying to surround us, cut off our escape routes. In a few more minutes we'd be trapped with no way out, except through people who believed my daughter was literally inhabited by evil spirits. Catherine, I whispered. When I say run, head for that window. Don't look back, don't hesitate. Just get outside and keep moving until you reach Uncle James's house. Papa, I won't leave you. You're not leaving me, sweetheart. You're saving both of us. Because the only way I can protect you is if you're safe first. Before she could argue further, I stepped into the main corridor of the basement, my weapon drawn and ready. In the lamplight, I could see at least a dozen men approaching from different directions. Some carrying improvised weapons, all of them wearing the expressions of people who believed they were doing God's work. Gentlemen, I said, keeping my voice calm and professional, I don't want to hurt anyone. But I will not allow my daughter to be harmed by well-meaning ignorance. She needs medical care, not exorcism. Reverend Blackwood appeared at the bottom of the stairs, flanked by two large men who looked more like hired muscle than devout parishioners. In the lamplight, I could see his face clearly for the first time, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. This wasn't the face of a confused but sincere religious leader. This was the face of a man who enjoyed the power and drama of his position. Someone who'd found in Catherine's condition an opportunity to demonstrate his spiritual authority and increase his influence over the community. "Doctor," he said with false sympathy, "I understand a father's desire to protect his child, but some evils are beyond the power of earthly medicine to cure. Your daughter has been chosen as a vessel for forces that seek to corrupt and destroy everything pure in this world. Only through spiritual warfare can she be saved. Show me the evidence," I challenged. "Show me one thing my daughter has done that can't be explained by natural causes." Blackwood smiled, the expression cold and calculating. "Very well, Doctor. Perhaps a demonstration will convince you of the supernatural nature of the forces we're dealing with." He signaled to his men, and they began to advance from all directions at once. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories of courage and family. Hit that subscribe button to never miss our incredible true tales. The confrontation in the church basement never came to violence, though it came closer than I care to remember. Just as Blackwood's men were closing in, preparing to overwhelm me through sheer numbers, a new voice cut through the tension like a blade. "That's enough." Everyone turned to see a woman descending the stairs, her appearance so unexpected that even Blackwood's followers stopped their advance. She was perhaps 40 years old, dressed in practical traveling clothes, and carrying herself with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell," she announced, "University of Chicago Medical School. I've been tracking cases of spontaneous electromagnetic phenomena across the Western Territories, and your daughter's symptoms match exactly what I've been studying." Blackwood's face darkened with suspicion. "Madam, this is no place for a woman. We are engaged in spiritual warfare against forces you could not possibly understand." Dr. Hartwell fixed him with a look that could have frozen water in July. "Reverend, I've been studying medicine longer than you've been preaching, and I can assure you that what you're witnessing has nothing to do with demons and everything to do with a rare but documented neurological condition." She turned to me, and I could see the compassion and intelligence in her eyes. "Dr. Mackenzie, I received word of your daughter's case from a colleague in Denver who read about the situation in the territorial newspapers. I came as quickly as I could. You know what's wrong with Catherine?" "I believe so. It's a condition we're calling electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome. The patient's nervous system becomes hyperactive, generating electrical fields that interfere with metal objects and sensitive instruments. It's been documented in at least a dozen cases across the country." Blackwood stepped forward, his voice rising with indignation. "You expect us to believe that a mere child can command the forces of nature through some imaginary medical condition? I've seen this girl stop every clock in the church simultaneously, make compasses point in impossible directions, and cause metal objects to move without touching them. All of which," Dr. Hartwell replied calmly, "are perfectly consistent with electromagnetic field generation. Reverend, what you've been interpreting as supernatural phenomena are actually symptoms of a serious medical condition that requires immediate treatment." "Lies," Blackwood snarled. "This is exactly the kind of scientific arrogance that allows evil to flourish in our modern world. You seek to explain away the supernatural with your earthly knowledge, but some things are beyond the understanding of mortal minds." Dr. Hartwell opened her medical bag and withdrew a device I'd never seen before, a metal contraption with dials and a needle that twitched and moved as she adjusted various settings. "This is an electromagnetic field detector, Reverend. It measures the kind of electrical activity that your possessed girl is generating." She approached Catherine, who had emerged from her hiding place, drawn by the sound of someone who might actually understand what was happening to her. As Dr. Hartwell moved the device closer to my daughter, the needle began to dance wildly, registering levels of electromagnetic activity that were clearly visible to everyone present. "As you can see," Dr. Hartwell announced, "Catherine is indeed generating powerful electromagnetic fields. But this is a medical phenomenon, not a supernatural one. Her nervous system is essentially malfunctioning, creating electrical charges that build up in her body and discharge through interaction with metal objects." The crowd of men who had been so ready to support Blackwood's exorcism suddenly looked uncertain. Here was scientific equipment providing measurable evidence for Dr. Hartwell's explanation, while Blackwood had offered only religious theory and dramatic proclamations. "Furthermore," Dr. Hartwell continued, "this condition is treatable. With proper medication to regulate her nervous system and techniques to help her manage the electrical buildup, Catherine can live a normal, healthy life." Catherine stepped forward, her voice weak but determined. "Reverend Blackwood, I've been trying to tell you that I'm not evil. I don't feel possessed, I feel sick. All I want is to get better and go home to my family." For a moment I thought Blackwood might admit his error and allow Dr. Hartwell to treat Catherine properly. But instead, his face hardened with stubborn certainty, and I realized that he was too invested in his supernatural explanation to accept any alternative. "This is exactly what the demons would have us believe," he declared. "They're using this woman's scientific instruments to create false evidence, making us doubt the spiritual nature of the threat we face." Dr. Hartwell sighed, clearly familiar with this type of resistance to medical explanation. "Reverend, I understand that accepting a scientific explanation for unexplained phenomena can be challenging for people of strong religious faith. But surely your God would want this child to receive proper medical care rather than suffer through unnecessary spiritual intervention." "God's ways are not our ways," Blackwood replied. But I could hear doubt creeping into his voice for the first time. It was Catherine herself who provided the final, decisive evidence. As the stress and emotion of the confrontation built to a peak, her condition triggered another electromagnetic episode. But this time, instead of being random and chaotic, the effects followed the pattern that Dr. Hartwell had predicted. Every piece of metal in the basement began to vibrate in harmony, creating a low musical hum that was both beautiful and unmistakably scientific in its precision. The electromagnetic field detector in Dr. Hartwell's hand registered massive spikes of activity, while the metal objects nearest to Catherine showed the strongest responses. "You see," Dr. Hartwell said to the amazed crowd, "the effects diminish with distance from Catherine's body, exactly as we would expect from electromagnetic field generation. If this were supernatural possession, the phenomena would be random and unpredictable, not following the laws of physics." The demonstration had a profound effect on Blackwood's followers. These were practical men, miners and merchants who understood cause and effect, and they could see for themselves that Dr. Hartwell's explanation made more sense than claims of demonic possession. One by one, they began to leave the basement, embarrassed by their participation in what they now recognized as misguided religious hysteria. Within minutes, only Blackwood and his two closest supporters remained, their faces showing the stubborn refusal to admit error that can afflict men who have invested too much pride in being wrong. "This changes nothing," Blackwood declared desperately. "The demons are simply more cunning than we imagined, using scientific mimicry to deceive the faithful." But even his most loyal supporters were beginning to back away, unwilling to continue supporting what had clearly become an untenable position. Dr. Hartwell ignored Blackwood entirely, focusing her attention on Catherine and beginning the preliminary medical examination that would determine the proper course of treatment. "Catherine, how long have you been experiencing these symptoms?" "About 3 months, ma'am. It started with headaches, and a feeling like electricity was running through my body. Then metal objects started reacting when I got upset or excited." Classic presentation, Dr. Hartwell murmured, making notes in a leather-bound journal. Dr. Mackenzie, your daughter will need to come with me to Denver for proper treatment. The medications required aren't available in smaller towns, and she'll need specialized therapy to learn to manage her condition. As we prepared to leave the church, taking Catherine to safety and proper medical care, Reverend Blackwood made one final attempt to maintain his narrative. You may have fooled these simple men with your scientific trickery, he called after us. But you cannot fool God. This girl is marked by evil, and sooner or later the truth will be revealed. Dr. Hartwell paused at the basement stairs and turned back to face him. Reverend, the truth has been revealed. You've chosen to ignore it because it doesn't fit your preconceptions about how the world works. But that's your limitation, not God's. 6 months later, Catherine returned to Silver Creek, healthy and happy, her condition successfully managed through Dr. Hartwell's treatment. She'd learned techniques for controlling the electromagnetic episodes and was taking medication that regulated her nervous system's electrical activity. Reverend Blackwood had left town in disgrace shortly after our confrontation, his reputation ruined by his stubborn refusal to accept medical evidence over supernatural explanation. The congregation found a new preacher, a gentler man who believed that God worked through doctors and medicine as well as through prayer and faith. Catherine went on to study medicine herself, inspired by Dr. Hartwell's example, and determined to help other people whose conditions might be misunderstood or misdiagnosed. She specialized in neurological disorders, becoming one of the leading experts in the country on electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome, and sometimes, late at night when we sat together on the porch of our home, Catherine would tell me how grateful she was that I'd believed her letter, believed in her intelligence and character rather than accepting the easy explanation that she was somehow possessed or evil. "Papa," she said once, "what would have happened to me if you hadn't come? If you'd believed what Reverend Blackwood was saying?" I held her close, thinking about all the children throughout history who'd suffered because adults preferred dramatic explanations to careful observation. Supernatural solutions to medical treatment. I don't know, sweetheart, I admitted, but I thank God every day that we'll never have to find out. The preacher had said she was possessed, but my daughter's letter had told the truth. And sometimes, in a world full of people eager to believe in demons and miracles, the simple truth is the most precious thing of all. Thank you for watching this incredible story of courage. Truth and the power of science over superstition. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell to never miss our amazing true stories that will touch your heart and inspire your soul. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today.